Hi, and thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Jacqueline.
And I'm your host, Nicole. Welcome to Perfictionist, where we share our passion for reading one story at a time.
On today's episode, we will be discussing The Witch Queen of Halloween by Kresley Cole. The Witch Queen of Halloween is part of the Immortals After Dark series, specifically book 18 and a half. If you guys are not familiar with the Immortals After Dark world, it is a huge world that Kresley Cole has created, and it is set on Earth mostly. It is basically like there's a bunch of immortals who live among humans. And there's a whole bunch of different like classes or factions of them. Some of the main ones, I want to say, although it's not really the main ones, but for me, it feels like some of the main ones are like the Valkyries are quite often featured as a main character. Then there's the Lycae, and they're essentially like Kresley's version of a werewolf. It's a very different werewolf. I'm doing air quotes compared to like they don't physically turn into a wolf. The way Kresley describes it is like their features become more pronounced, but there is like an image that flickers over them of like this kind of like wolf that flickers over them, and it's like a beast. They call it like the beast in like Gaelic. It's like a word in Gaelic that I absolutely can't pronounce, so I'm not even going to try. Because like most of the Lycae hail from Scotland. And then they've set up different various places to live in like the States or Canada. You have the witches, and witches are often, I think they're often mercenaries in the story. And so they quite often, like the way that the other factions are kind of like frowning on them a little bit because, well, maybe not. I guess it depends on who you are, but they sell spells, and like they're very like money oriented, very business oriented. Like,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they'll sell like protection spells and stuff like that. What else? So within the Valkyrie, they have a coven, and their queen, her name is Fury, and she's half Fury, half Valkyrie. And she has been lost for a long time.
Oh.
I'm not going to give away where she is, because if you've read the series, you know where she is now. But she's still not with her people.
Oh, okay.
There's the demons. And then within the demons, there's a whole bunch of different types of demons. So in the book we're talking about today, the demon is a smoke demon. And he's just one of the many different types of demons, and his name is Roke. And the protagonist, Poppy, the other protagonist, I should say, is a witch. So these are two factions that we've discussed. I don't know if I really need to go deeper into all the other factions because they're not relevant to this particular story. But those are just kind of the main ones I was kind of thinking of. And then you also have like all these creatures outside of the sort of hero type characters that you'll encounter in the universe. So you'll have like you have ghouls, for example. Like, you're not going to have a ghoul as a main character. They're like a mindless, like bloodthirsty creature, right? And they're all like living among us in this realm of Earth, because the way that this world is set up, there are different like realms, and so you can go in between realms. Oh, there's the nymphs as well. But anyways, I could go on forever. There's quite a few different like, I don't know, races or species, I guess. Yeah, species. Anyway, I get really excited because I love this world.
It sounds like it's a very, very well thought out and deeply developed world.
Yes, it is. And it's very unserious. There's like some serious themes sometimes explored. We will be discussing Hunting Adeline, and that one's very, very dark and serious. The way that Kresley Cole writes, at least in this series, is there's comic relief, and it's unserious. So they're fun reads, I think.
Yeah, it definitely has like a sense of humor. Like Kresley has a sense of humor to her writing. And like there'll be jokes kind of throughout.
Yeah, but it's always sexy. At least, like, not obviously in the Arcana series, but like this, but in her adult series, it's always very sexy, and also like there's comic relief, but then there's like it's adventurous. They're very fun,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't recommend them enough. If you are into spice, if you're not into spice, I wouldn't read these.
Well, thank you for a little, because this is the very first book from the Immortals After Dark series I've read. So I think it's helpful to kind of get an understanding of the world if you are also new to this series. And at the very beginning, it's kind of helpful because this is considered like a standalone book within the series. So you don't have to have read it in order, and you can just pick this one up. So there's like a little bit of information at the very beginning, and we do have a prologue. And in the prologue, we meet a priestess, a sorceress, and a Valkyrie, and they meet in New Orleans on Halloween, and they are like talking about this like upcoming apocalypse. And there seems to be these two types of beings, the primordials and the immortals.
Yeah, so the primordials are like the first of their species.
Oh, okay. And then the immortals are just all those different factions
Everybody
or
else. Yeah.
species you were
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And then there's this quote, and it says, Mariquetta the Awaited dispatched someone on a mission tonight, and the fallout could be catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hearing this from the Queen of Reflections. So there's all these different cool characters that like just kind of pop up. So I'm assuming if you've read the series, like these different characters have more meaning, and you maybe haven't know them or have been introduced to them.
I will give you another little bit of tidbit of info for the world that is applicable to this story.
Mm-hmm.
So Mariquetta is the Queen of Reflections. So in this story, particularly with the females, the most powerful female of that faction, or with the witches, it's a little different because they all have sort of different powers.
Mm-hmm.
If you are considered the most powerful, then you are the queen.
Oh, okay.
And it's not like you're the queen and you rule. It just means you're the queen of this skill. You're the queen of that skill. Yeah.
Oh,
And you're
that's
considered
cool.
the queen. Yeah, it's a really cool concept.
Okay, so this individual Mariquetta is like a very powerful.
I think she's extremely powerful. And there's a story about her, and it's wonderful. There's a full book. This is a novella. There's a full novel on Mariquetta's story.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts off very ominous, anyways, with this announcing of an impending apocalypse and how events of tonight could be catastrophic. I mean, that kind of sounds a little, for a very unserious book.
Yeah.
You're getting into. You're like, oh, what's going on here?
It's unserious, but it's adventurous. So it's like, right? Yeah.
There's some
high stakes. Yeah. Yeah. So Poppy Dyer is the main character of this book, who we can assume is the Witch Queen of Halloween. But what does that even mean? And like, as someone who's been an avid fan of this series for a long time, I was like, Witch Queen of Halloween? Like, what even is that? Right?
Well, I guess we can, by what you said about Queen, we can say that she becomes like very powerful in the
of Halloween.
Of Halloween.
Yeah. So to me, I was like, I don't understand. I must read and find out. Right? Because the word queen has meaning in this world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's a mercenary. I don't think she's necessarily found her stride in her power yet, as a lot of the witches that we read about in this series, like they're trying to find their stride and like their specialty.
So do they already know what kind of witch they're going to be, or do they kind of like discover?
They discover it. Yeah. Like when like, I'm just so hesitant. I don't want to talk about it too freely in case someone is like, oh, I'd like to read that series. But yeah, it seems to be that there is a sense of discovery with the witches, especially when they're young and they don't necessarily know what they're going to be super awesome at. It's not like you can expect, oh, the smoke demon was with another smoke demon, so therefore they will produce smoke demon offspring kind of thing, right?
Oh.
It's not like the same as that. Like there'll be a witch, but like what are they going to be? What's going to be their thing?
Interesting. Oh, I like that because it brings another level of like, oh, we could just have more fun with this.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
wonderful.
super interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So Roke, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Coors, but we just know him as Roke. And we've run into him in past stories in Immortals After Dark a little bit. And so this is his story. Smoke Demon, he's another mercenary or soldier of fortune. And he's in between jobs in this particular story. And so if you've been reading the Immortals After Dark series, you know that demons okay, so first of all, rewinding, Immortals After Dark is very much a fated mates thing. It is very much, each book is usually based on a couple that turn out to be fated mates or chosen mates or whatever. It's
Mhm.
mates though.
Yeah.
Like, you know. So with demons, the way that they work in Immortals After Dark is they do this thing called attempting. And they don't actually know somebody's their mate until they've attempted them. And attempting them is sex.
Yeah.
And the way that they know that somebody is their mate is that they're actually able to expel certain fluids once they've committed the act with their mate. They can like reach peak happiness, we could call it, with anyone else, but they won't be able to.
Yes. I think we get it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I'm like, how do I say this in a way that isn't just saying it? But yeah, so the demons call it attempting. So they'll run around attempting hundreds of women or maybe thousands,
Oh.
depending on how old they are, throughout their life trying to find their mate.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
What a burden on them.
Roke and Poppy are mercenaries who find themselves trapped in a haunted house on the eve of Halloween.
Yeah, I know. This haunted mansion is like such a perfect like setting. It's just so stereotypical, but like in the best way possible. And I feel like this book, because it is a novella and it's relatively short, I feel like it's like the perfect book to pick up this time of year. I mean,
Yes.
I think it'd be great anytime, but if you are just like someone who likes to kind of vibe read and you're like, oh, it's like coming up Halloween, we're getting, the leaves are changing, it's just getting into that spooky season. I feel like this would be a great one because it doesn't take too long to read it. And
Yes.
it like just gets you very much in the Halloween vibes.
It's like the most Halloweeny book I've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
So, quick recap. So, Poppy has a curse.
Mm-hmm.
And her curse kind of only happens on Halloween, right? Well, it doesn't
It does.
kind of. It only happens on Halloween. Like, let's just be more assertive about this. She is told that going to the haunted mansion will help her with her curse, like help her figure out her curse. Maybe get rid of her curse. That's what she's hoping, right? She wants to get rid of this horrible curse. So she can only enter this mansion on Halloween when it's a full moon. So this is like an opportunity she cannot pass up because obviously not every Halloween lands on a full moon.
Yeah, it's like once in a 20 year or 50. I don't know. It says in the book, but I don't remember how much.
Yeah.
And then Roke arrives at the mansion as well. And he says he's like on a mission. He's like, I'm here because I'm being paid to be here. This is my job. She knows it's his job. They run into each other on missions all the time. So it's a very plausible excuse for the time being.
Yes. So plausible. Poppy's curse is every time there's a Halloween, there's like Halloween nightmares from like our world, like scary, creepy things you think of on Halloween essentially come to life and try to kill her. So it's like terrifying. A really bad curse to have. They were previously not like I think they were more images, but now they're like, oh no, bro, like we embody now.
Yeah, no, they like went from being like almost like I was picturing them as like like, you could like
yeah
push your hand through them, kind of like ghost light, where they're not really there. It's like they're there but not really there. And now it's like they're in the haunted house and all of a sudden these things can actually touch her, because before they would like actually go through her.
Yes.
And now it's like, nope, they're out to get her.
They're out and they are solid.
It's actually really funny the first time the first she calls them visitors, right?
Yes, yeah.
The first ones that come to visit her, and they're like sitting in the kitchen or something, and she's like totally nonchalant, thinking they're just going to pass right through like they always do. And then all of a sudden they're like attacking her and Rook, and she's like, oh, they're like alive this time.
Oh, this is different. Not cool. We're locked in this mansion and we can't get out, and these guys can actually like hurt us. I just want to like touch on like there's obviously some tension sizzling between these two, some attraction, but like heavy attraction sizzling between them. And but the thing is in this world, if you've like been with somebody as a demon, they can summon you at any time. They're like, yeah,
Yes.
let's come to me and let's like have another awesome night. And so like they're having like almost a moment. And then Rogue starts to like disappear because he's being summoned away.
Yeah. Yeah, on their, because they had like previously dated before the haunted house. They'd previously dated, and this
Yeah.
is how their date went. And she's like left in the restaurant, like
Yeah, completely.
like she knew it could happen,
Yeah,
but like she
but,
was
like, on a
expecting him
date,
to
she
come
was
back.
so excited too, I think, and then
Yeah.
like she's expecting him to come back and he doesn't. So like that would hurt. That would
That
be
would
so
hurt so
hurtful.
bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So then she's just probably imagining that he's fooling around with whoever summoned him instead, which
Yeah.
is like bizarre, right?
No, so that would be very awkward to be trapped in a haunted house with someone who you had like a bad date with. You're like, oh my goodness, like
You're trapped in this haunted house. Yeah. Her feelings are like, you know, you'd be feeling kind of spicy because you'd be like, like, like that didn't hurt my feelings at all.
no, but yeah, like trying to pretend
Right?
like you don't
Like,
care.
It's all good. Like, but I hate you, but at the same time, like, whatever. But it's a forced proximity situation.
Yes, exactly. And
Mhm.
it's also like timed because they only have until like the sunrise to break the curse, because at sunrise that's the only time to get out. If they don't leave the mansion at sunrise, then they're stuck in there until the next Halloween full moon. And they don't want to be stuck in there. Like they would perish because there's no food and stuff in there.
Yes.
So it's like forced proximity with someone who you don't want to be with,
Who you
in a
like
haunted
you want
mansion.
to be with, but you also resent so bad.
Yeah. And then on top of all of that, with all the visitors, and they find themselves in a laboratory with a monster, because why not? You're in a creepy mansion. Of course there's going to be a monster.
Of course. And it's Halloween. And so they end up finding like a Frankenstein sort of laboratory. Oh my god, that part was creepy. I was like not expect. I was like, this is so creepy.
It was described very well though. Like you really
was.
got the full visual of like light, and there's like lightning happening when they're in there, so that like kind of adds to the whole Frankenstein-esque nature of it all. And like there's like things inside these glass liquidy, and
Yeah.
then like every time the lightning goes off, they like start to like kind of twitch and move and stuff. Very, very
Yes.
visually grotesque, but like also appealing because it's Halloween vibes.
Yes. This is appealing for this time of year. Yeah. So they're both like completely attracted to each other. They can't help it.
Mhm.
I think Roke is like aware. He has suspected for some time that Poppy is his mate.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't had the opportunity to attempt her yet. And there is like this barricade emotionally between them because of what happened on their date.
Mm-hmm. And like I like how as the story progresses in the present day, we get flashbacks from both perspectives. So we're slowly piecing together why these two are so sour with each other, like why there's like this tension between them.
Yes.
And kind of like what happened on their date. And then like after that, when he did finally reappear, basically Poppy's sister was like, dude, no, like get out of here.
Yeah.
You can't have her.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay. And like respectfully just like backs away. Not very demon W, I might say. But they realize that in order to leave the mansion, so they're like going through this whole journey through the mansion, they've kind of had some discoveries about themselves along the way. And finally they're at the end and they're like, we need to leave. And then Brooke's like, but if we leave, the ghouls will get us. And so he's like,
Yes.
all right, I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to get her out of here, and then I'll be a ghoul, but it's okay because she'll be safe. And like, they have discovered their mates, and he's like, as long as she's safe, I don't really care. That's kind of been his whole shtick the whole way through, is like,
Yes.
she's my mate, so all that matters to me is that she has a good life, and it doesn't
Yes.
mean I need to be with her, blah, blah, blah. But then at the same time, as he's like, not talking to her, not having a conversation, because we can't use communication. No, no,
Of
no.
course
He's
not.
just like
No.
planning it all for her. And she's like, discovers this really, really cool thing. And all along, it has not been a curse, but it has been her power. Like,
Yes.
did you at any point figure out that this actually was her power?
No. No.
No.
I was very like in the moment. I mean, obviously it makes sense. It tells us in the title, right? But all of a sudden it's like, because I was like, I don't really understand how she's like a queen of Halloween. Well, it makes complete sense. Okay, so she can actually, these visitors are actually hers, and
Mm-hmm.
she has full control of them. She would be a horrifying opponent to have. But once she realizes that, now she's like super powerful because she can embrace her power, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes her the queen. Like, there's no one else who can even do that power, right?
Well, she didn't even know it was a power. She thought she was being haunted this whole time, and it's like she was
Mm-hmm.
haunting herself.
She was haunting herself. Her
Oh
power
my
kept like
gosh.
coming out, and it's probably stronger on Halloween. I'm assuming that's like why it would come out on Halloween.
Yeah.
But now she realizes it is her power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the ghouls are no longer such a problem with the fact that she now has all of this power that she can
Yeah.
use.
And so, yeah, she basically uses them to fight off the ghouls. And Roke's plan didn't even matter because she
No,
came in and
she's
kicked butt.
under control. I really like that about the Immortals After Dark. It's very like the women are very badass and
Mhm.
quite often end up saving the men. And I enjoy that about the series. The first book of the series is very much like, oh, you think like the man is much more powerful, or sorry, the male is much more powerful than than the female.
Mhm.
But you just have to read it to find out why that may not be true.
No, that's really awesome. That's like essentially the story in a nutshell or like the plot in a nutshell. They get out
Yes.
safe, and but they don't get out safe just themselves. Something else gets out with them. And this, I'm like, what are you saying? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
So the monster also gets out. And I feel like we'll talk about it a bit later, but I feel like that is leading to something. And I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay.
That being like the plot in a nutshell, there's a lot going on within the story itself.
There's redemption and forgiveness. This is a heavy theme in this, well, heavily enunciated in this book. There's nothing heavy about this book. It's a very light, fun, fast-paced, kind of creepy read. So Roke does not want to hold Poppy back from becoming her witch self. So he decides not to act on the mate bond, but like without consulting her on that, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like that is an issue that he could have consulted upon with her instead of just deciding it.
Well, just the fact, like, I feel like he was going to. Like, he was, because he got sent away, and you said, like, or we talked about how she was sitting at the restaurant and she expected him to come back,
Mm-hmm.
but he wasn't coming back. He wasn't coming back. So finally she left. The
Yeah.
thing with him being taken away is that he thought it was only like a couple minutes when he returned to the restaurant to find her
Mm-hmm.
gone, where it had been hours. So, like, the
Mm-hmm.
time, something happens with time when he's pulled away.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, why did she run off? So he goes to like find her and talk to her about it. And then her sister steps in and is like, she will never become her full self if you're her mate. Like, the sister figures out that they're mated
Mm-hmm.
and is like, no, like, if you want what's best for her, then you'll let her marry a wizard so she can become her full witch self.
Can you just imagine like all these people making these decisions for you without your knowledge? I'd be so
Mhm.
choked. I mean, like,
I would be so choked.
excuse
And like
you.
the like absolutely horrific part of it, I mean, the whole thing is just like absurd. But like the fact that actually her being with a wizard has no bearing on her power at all. In
No,
fact, it was because of what her and Roke went through.
that her power came out.
Yeah, he brought out her power.
So here's the thing, though. A lot of what happens in this series is initiated by Nyx. She is the primordial Valkyrie known as Nyx the Ever-Knowing, or Nuckingfuts Nyx.
And was she one of the ones at the beginning? Yeah, she's the Valkyrie at the very beginning of the story.
And she can see. She's a soothsayer. She can see the future. She can see everything. So she's a little confused sometimes, but she can see. And so she quite often, so the accession is happening throughout this whole series. And that is like when all the immortals essentially kill each other off. Not like completely. It's basically like a way of them keeping their population in check.
Oh,
And so it just keeps happening. Yeah, every so often. I think it's like 500 years or can't remember. But it happens every so often, few hundred, whatever years. And it's a way for the immortals to keep their population in check, basically. And everyone
interesting.
knows it's coming. And so people are creating alliances or not creating alliances or just choosing sides and stuff like that. And Nyx is on the one side, and so she's helping. And so during the accession, a lot of mates find each other, and that's why there's so many mates finding each other in this accession.
Is the entire series kind of the accession like
It's
happening?
leading up to like the accession has begun, and so yeah, the whole series is like, oh, the accession has begun. Oh my goodness. And then they're just kind of like, it's everybody's stories. And so a lot of it is happening at the same time as other stories. So
Oh, okay.
so there's like quite a few books in this series already, and it's not done. So but a lot of it's, so you'd think like a lot of time has passed within the world, but it's not as much as you'd think, because there's a lot of simultaneous pairings happening that you end up reading about.
Oh, interesting. And that
Mm-hmm.
kind of leads me to a question about that. So, is the apocalypse the same as the accession, or are those different things?
No, I think no. I think the accession is just literally just this event that happens to keep immortals in check. Otherwise, they would just take over everything.
Oh, okay. And the
Mm-hmm.
apocalypse is something separate that is forthcoming.
I think that this session is different. It's different than past ones, and maybe there's the potential for apocalyptic things to happen, but I don't know, so I don't want to. I don't want to give a wrong opinion or give the wrong idea.
As someone who like it doesn't know this world, I'm wondering if this book is like a turning point. Like to me, as someone just popping in, it seems like a kind of pivotal point within the storyline where like the whole monster being set free at the end is some sort of like turning point within the building that's happening.
It didn't make too much of an impression on me because a lot of much larger, seemingly more important things happen, but that monster will definitely have a place in the story. Like, I can't imagine him just wandering free and then that it being it. I'm sure it'll be mentioned again. Whether it's pivotal or not, I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Because I believe it says in the story, and I could be wrong, but I believe the monster is a primordial ghoul. Like he's the first ghoul that was
Mm-hmm.
created.
Yeah, all the
So,
primordials are kind of, yeah, there's like a bunch of different layers because it's not just primordials and then also like normal immortals or whatever, like their descendants. There's also like another faction of mortals, super immortals that are super powerful that often contain like primordials within that group called the Morior, and they're like way more powerful than everybody else, almost like godlike. So there's like a lot of different stuff going on. There's also like not just the immortals with like their queens and then like the different factions. There's also goddesses
oh.
and gods as well. And Nyx is on her way to a goddesshood because she's old enough now.
Oh, so you work your way up to becoming a goddess. It's not like a separate being. What a fascinating world. For me, I find that Cressley is just such a masterful story creator. Like
Mm-hmm.
the ideas she comes up with, like this whole idea of this person being cursed and then having to like go into this creepy mansion and like work through essentially like her own power struggles
Mm-hmm.
at the same time as working through this like relationship issue she's got going on to
Mm-hmm.
discover who she is and like come into her full witchy being. Oh,
Yes. It's very cool. And I saw a quote today on the Facebook group from the full, because this is a novella that we're talking about today, and there is a full novel coming out in December called Shadow's Heart, and it features Cosmina, which is a vampire princess, and there are no such thing as female vampires in this story because there's a virus that if they come down like into Earth or whatever, like outside of their realm, they will die.
oh, that sounds so interesting. So how is she here?
Right? So this book is Cosmina's story, and it's called
Oh.
Shadow's Heart, and it's going to be coming out later this year. So I'm super stoked for it. And there was a quote about, remember how I mentioned Fury and how she's the
Mhm.
queen of the Valkyries, and she's like, or the leader of the Valkyries, and she's been missing. There was a quote about Fury today, and I was like,
Mm.
what? What about Fury? So, yeah. Well, like when you know what's happening to Fury while she's while she's away, it's like torture not having Fury's story be resolved, knowing what's happening to her.
What you know.
Knowing what you know, yeah.
How did you find sort of Poppy's, I guess, story arc throughout? Because being a novella, you don't have a lot of time to build a character story.
hmm I thought it was great. I thought that like even though it was such a short story, it really like gave a good sense of who Poppy was, and obviously the relationship trouble her and Roke immediately faced even previous to this book.
Mhm.
So I'd never felt like a weird sense of I don't know who these guys are. Like right away, you got a good sense of their characters, and yeah. So I thought it was great. There's a book I'm reading right now, which I'm not going to mention the name of, where I am really struggling because the characters feel so hollow.
Oh,
So when
yeah.
I compare that story to this one is way more masterful.
No, I 100% agreed that even though we weren't with the characters for a very long time, it felt like we knew them and their personalities very early on. Like it was established kind of they're like Poppy has a bit of a fiery nature. She
hmm
seems very strong-willed and like you just get that right away. And then Roik is also very strong-willed, but like you
hmm
also quite immediately get the sense of his soft nature and like
hmm
basic from what I understood from this particular book is that once a demon finds his mate he's supposed to like seek her out relentlessly and that's what
hmm
Poppy we get that because Poppy's friend had a demon mate and he
hmm
like was like went after her and
hmm
so she's like oh he can't be my mate because he's not pursuing me
hmm
relentlessly. So we
hmm
get like so much from his character, just the fact that he's going against that demonic nature to pursue
hmm
her
hmm
because he wants what's best for her, he was told was best for
Yeah,
her.
he's actually like I wish this hadn't been a novella and that it had been like a full novel because I wanted more of Roke because he is very different from other demons in that way. Like he isn't like necessarily just going full out like raging. There's rage demons by the way, but anyways, like but yeah, like it's like he does have like that soft side to him that like you don't
Mhm.
often necessarily see explored in this world. So I would have liked to have read more.
Well, and even like the sense that he can cut off that tie where people he slept with won't be able to call him, but it's like it almost sounds like it's like a painful or humiliating situation. So he doesn't want to do that with people until he has to. So he's like
Mhm.
always tries to spare people's feelings, and I don't know. He
Mhm.
seems like such a sweet little demon. But yeah, it just goes towards like how much you get to know a character in such a short amount of time. But I
Mhm.
also found it really, really like one scene that I thought was so interesting, or like not interesting, just like funny and like I don't know, notable was they're like, whatever, screw it. Like, we're in this haunted mansion. Let's just give in to our desires. We both obviously are attracted to each other. And they're doing that. And she starts to notice he is doing something he should not be able to do, as you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unless they're mated. And she's like, dude, I'm your mate. Like, this should not be happening right now if we're not mated.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that's how she discovers that they're mates. And, like, kind of more of the story comes out of why
Mm-hmm.
he didn't pursue her, even though that's, I don't know. I thought that whole, like, they're up in the attic and
Yeah. Yeah.
a
I
very good
really
scene.
enjoyed that. Yeah. Yeah.
But her, like, she was so angry at him for that. It was just like
Mm-hmm.
mid, like, they were doing their thing. And then she was like, what? And just like stops.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, but then some visitors come and interrupt anyways. But
Yeah. Ah,
it was a very
yeah.
humorous way for her to discover.
Yes.
And it's kind of
And
like for the reader, it's kind of like, because it is a sexy book. And then you're
mm-hmm.
like, they're getting into it. And then, like, you're cut off.
I know.
So it's
And then
like,
it's like,
as a reader,
oh,
you're also.
dang it. Dang it. Oh, yeah. Cock blocked.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, go away, visitors. We were busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's I really enjoy Cressley's writing in the series because like there's that humorous aspect to it, like even in serious moments or whatever. And a lot of the female characters are very fiery in their
Mhm.
own way. So it's not repetitive in any way, even if they all are fiery, because they're all fiery in their own way. So it's a good series. I would highly recommend reading the whole thing, which is a large undertaking.
Yeah, no, for sure. You said this is 18.5?
Yes.
And are there a lot of novellas throughout those 18?
I feel like I can only think of one other one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, as someone who has read the series, what were your overall thoughts of this as part of the Immortals After Dark world?
I thought it was great. It was very different because like the Halloween element was a very different thing to like happen in terms of power and stuff like that. It was very, very different in the way that like that's Halloween seems like a very human concept, right? So
Mhm.
it was like very different in that way because all of everything else that she does is so not human related that it feels yeah unique, but it fits in really well, and it is a really cool it actually fits in seamlessly because it like the fact that Poppy is the witch queen of Halloween and like has this super creepy power in a way is just it just fits in seamlessly with the rest of like the vibe of the series.
That's really cool. As someone who has never read an Immortals After Dark book, and this is my first entry into the world, I felt like it, as a standalone book, was well done in the sense that I didn't feel left out. I think there's a lot of Easter eggs, and I think it even
Mhm.
says that for readers of this series, there are a lot of nice Easter eggs for you to like delve into. But as someone who doesn't pick up on those Easter eggs, it didn't feel lost. Like I didn't feel
Mm.
like I was like, what's going I wasn't wondering what was going on. The story itself was a really, really unique, interesting story that held my
Mhm.
attention, but then also made me interested in the wider worlds without
Mhm.
feeling like I wasn't, like missing any pieces.
So the cool thing about this series is that you can read each book as a standalone. So you don't have to start at the beginning because it's each sort of mate's story in each book. So it's not like a linear timeline necessarily because so
Mhm.
many of the same things are happening at the same time. Like I when I first read the series, because I'm on my second read through of the series now ish because I'm breaking off and reading other stuff too. And when I first read it, when I was reading, like I accidentally read a few of the books out of order,
Mhm.
and I could tell when I was reading it, I was like, "Oops, I must have read this one out of order," because you can always tell like who the next couple is going to be. Usually, well, I don't know if always, but usually you can tell who the next couple is going to what the book's going to be about because they're mentioned in some way in that story. So you can like get a sense of what the next book is going to be about, but it's not crucial in order to enjoy the book. So I
Mm-hmm.
would have gone from this, say, book 3 to book 4, but I accidentally went to book 6. And I'm like, I can tell that I accidentally skipped a few, but it doesn't matter for this story.
Yeah, you can still enjoy that book
Mm-hmm.
in what it's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Because it mentions people like you should know who they are, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not critical in order to enjoy the story.
Yeah, so maybe it would add depth to if you are
Yeah.
looking to understand like the world, it would add
Mm-hmm.
depth to read it in order. But if you
Mm-hmm.
just are interested in individual, like if some stories kind of pique your interest more than others, you can
Mm-hmm.
just read those ones without diving into like the world of it.
Exactly. So it's nice because you can kind of pick it up. You don't have to like sprint read it or whatever. You can just read it as you wish.
Hmm. No, I think that's really nice, but I do wonder if as the story progresses, because we have that this thing that it's kind of leading up to and this potential apocalypse, I wonder
Mm.
if at that point it would make more sense to read it in somewhat of an order, like
Yes.
a before and
Yes.
after. It's like read this chunk of books before
Yeah.
reading this chunk of books.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. For the next Immortals After Dark book that I'd like for you to read is Lothair.
You have mentioned that a few times.
He's a character mentioned many times throughout the series, and he's important. So I think that if you were to read Lothair, that would be like a good one to read.
Gives you lots of background on
Yeah,
a variety of things.
that's I think one of my favorite ones on in the whole series. You've got to read it.
If you are new to the world of Immortals After Dark, or you are a seasoned reader, I think we can agree that this would be a fun read either way.
Yeah, I think it's fun for anybody, really.
Yeah, just a good time all around for those people who like it a little spooky and a little spicy.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
In our next episode, we'll discuss Hunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. Thanks again, and we hope to see you there.